Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I am particularly proud of this transformation because, well, number one, this piece was in need of a lot of help. And number two, it was a project that I chose to be featured in the Turquoise Iris Journal, which is a magazine by creatives and for creatives. I was asked by Dion Woods, who is the founder of the Turquoise Iris Journal, to be a curator for the magazine. So this was my first volume that I was in, and this was the makeover that I chose for that. I was having a hard time coming up with a plan for this one. I just couldn't get a vision until I realized I had some decoupage paper in my stash. So I pulled that decoupage paper out and used that for inspiration. I chose the Angel paper from Mint by Michelle, and that set the tone for the entire piece. My name is BJ, my business is called Junkdup, and I am so glad you're here today. So the inside of this cabinet was pretty easy. Once I got that center panel knocked out and filled up some holes, I just gave it a couple coats of white Swan. The outside of the cabinet, however, I struggled with, and you will see that coming up. This part was all fine. I decided on Bohemian Blue because I hadn't used it in a long time and because there was blue and whites in that Angel paper, so that's what I was playing off of. The first coat, just to get it all covered. Second coat, light stippling motion. This is a clay-based paint, so I didn't add anything, and I'm just getting a little bit of texture here by using that bristle brush that I'm using and that stippling motion. But you won't ever be alone. I can get a little angry, be a little dangerous. So normally when I am blending paint, I don't struggle this much, but for whatever reason, this one just was a slog for me. I don't know if it's because I was on a deadline and I was feeling pressure because this was going to be published in a magazine. I don't know what it was, but it was just so hard for me. It wasn't the tools. I used good brushes that I've used many times before. That brush that I'm using to blend right there is a phenomenal brush for blending and one of my favorites. It certainly wasn't the paint because I almost exclusively use DIY paint with always good outcome. It was clearly user error and just, I think I wasn't in the mood. Baby, it's what I do. Baby, it's also. I've also used this same technique to amazing effect before, and it just wasn't feeling it this time. I just don't know if it was the combination of colors that I used or what it was. I will link the video below where I used this frottage technique, and it turned out great. So because I wasn't happy with what I had going on so far, I decided to kind of do a little bit of a wash. DIY paint can be watered down. The nice thing about watering it down is that the pigmentation is so good in this paint. You can water it down significantly and still have awesome pigmentation and color to your paint. I ended up walking away from this piece for a little bit because the more I threw at it, the more I was just getting frustrated. And again, I really don't have an answer other than I just wasn't in the zone. So that happens. And sometimes when that's happening, the best thing to do is walk away. Go start something else. Go work on something small. Just go for a walk and clear your head. It happens. And it happens to everybody. After getting to the point where I thought this was salvageable and it was okay, I just repeated exactly what I had done or close to what I had done on the remaining side. I still wasn't really loving any of the techniques that I used, but once I'd done, and I just repeated what I did on the other side, so at least the two sides looked relatively the same. Going to clip a little bit of a paint inlay to use on the panels on the front. It really needed a little bit of design element there, but I didn't want to take away from the decoupage paper because I want that decoupage paper on the back of the cabinet on the inside to be the star of the show. I will link a playlist that I have for all the other videos that I have using a paint inlay, and you can see how that's done. Here what I'm doing is I'm basically just using a damp brush as a distressing tool. So that bristled brush, that stiff bristled brush, I'm using it to kind of just take some paint off, blend a little bit of that halo where you can kind of see where I put the paint inlay down. Just one thing to note about those paint inlays is you do have to spray them with some kind of setting spray so that you don't smear it, because that paint that you've put on there can be reactivated. So now that I was kind of okay with the piece at this point, I thought it just needed some more. So the way that I do that is with a dry brush. So the key to getting a good dry brush effect is to have a little bit of paint on your brush, henceforth the term dry brush. And then I start with a very light hand and I just keep using that brush without adding more paint. And the more the paint comes off, the heavier I can be with my brush stroke, if that makes sense. So this darker color that I'm using here was a mystery color. Every once in a while, the warehouse who makes the paint will send retailers, of which I am one, these mystery colors that either didn't make the cut or that they mistinted. And so I would say this is probably a little bit darker version of Gravel Road, but if you wanted a similar look, you could use Weathered Wood. I'm a big fan of using this dry brush technique to shade and just create some drama and some depth and dimension. It works particularly well when you have either some kind of raised design or you've created a little bit of texture, but it also works very well when you have a smooth surface too, and it is a great way to just add that little bit of extra oomph to your project. So I added some clear wax, just one coat of clear wax, and then decided it needed just a little bit of dark wax. So kind of those same areas where I did all that dry brushing, I added some of the dark wax. Many of you might be asking, why would you bother to do all of that dry brushing if you're just going to add dark wax? And here's the thing. I'm just building up the layers. It leads to a more authentic and complex and natural looking finish by adding up these layers. So that's why I dry brushed in two different colors, and that's why I'm doing the clear wax and the dark wax. It just makes it a little bit more complex and gives it that depth. So one of the tricks that I love about using dark wax is go clear wax, and then dark wax, and then clear wax again. And when you have a finish that has texture on it, you're taking away all that dark wax that's sitting on top, and it leaves that dark wax just in the crevices, and it is a great way to create age without a heavy dark wax finish. So I am not a great decoupage doer. I struggle with getting a decoupage result that doesn't have wrinkles, so I just embrace the wrinkles and go with it. So I did go to the big box store and get a new piece of wood because, as you saw in the beginning, that back piece originally was cardboard. I do know that in order to get the colors to be true for the decoupage paper, you got to paint white first or put your decoupage paper on a white surface. That helps the colors stay true that are in your paper. Mint by Michelle advises not to use Mod Podge with her decoupage papers, but I only found that out after the fact. So I used Mod Podge because that's what I had on hand. I will put the link to this beautiful paper in the description box below for anybody who's interested. I don't retail decoupage papers, so I bought this from 317 Home, which is a local Annie Sloan stockist to me, and she carries the Mint by Michelle decoupage papers. And you can see I'm not very good at this. Like, I struggle. I had to reposition my paper a couple times, and I'm going to have wrinkles that you'll see at the end, and that's okay. Everything is a learning process. In the little bit of decoupaging that I have done, I do know that especially when you're working with a paper of this size, it is easiest to work in sections. And I also do like to mist the back of the paper. I feel like that kind of helps with some of the wrinkles. Although I'm not a decoupage expert, I will say that this is one tip that I've learned along the way that I feel confident sharing, and that is to get nice clean edges is just use a little bit of sandpaper and it will make those decoupage edges super clean. It's a lot easier to do that than it is to cut your paper to size beforehand. After using a little bit of Big Top on top of that decoupage paper to seal it all in and having some glass cut for the shelf, I went ahead and reassembled everything. I did find these battery operated little puck lights at my big box store, and they made all the difference in the world. In the end, I'm super proud that I struggled through with the design concept and struggled through some challenges with this piece, and it turned out okay. As a matter of fact, it turned out better than okay because I took it up to my booth space inside Logan Village Mall on like a Tuesday night, and it sold on Wednesday the next day. So somebody else must have really liked it too. And here it is in the spring volume of the Turquoise Iris Journal. I was super proud, and it was an amazing feeling seeing my work in print. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.